Point of personal privilege?
Point of personal privilege.
So yesterday, we had a good friend of ours on the show, and a guy who's been a guest for some time, a guy who he knows. He's been one of my heroes for years now, a great writer, David Frum. He writes for The Atlantic. David came on the show yesterday, and we're having a good conversation. But we were talking about the Fox News employees that actually talked to Courtney Kuby and other people at NBC News and said that he'd been drinking too much there. And it was devastating.
Concerned.
It was a devastating report. And David flippantly said, was joking, he said, if you're too drunk for Fox News, you're very, very drunk indeed. We went on with this segment. And just to let you know how things work here, I was asking Mika, should we address that or not? Because if somebody had said that about any news outlet, we'd usually say something about it to reference the entire network. So at the end, and I want to get the words right, Mika said this: the comment was a little too flippant for the moment we're in. We disagree with Fox News, but there's some good people over there. And we, of course,
were worried about Pete Hegseth.
We're also, of course, talking about those people so worried at Fox News about America's national security that they were talking to an NBC News reporter
coming forward
saying Hegseth was not qualified. So Mika said after, the comment was a little too flippant for the moment we're in. We disagree with Fox News, but there's some good people over there, including, of course, those talking to NBC News about their concerns. This got turned into a column and a headline that said that, well, let's see, what was the headline? The sound of fear. No, that wasn't the sound of fear. That was the sound of civility. And saying that Mika had apologized. Mika didn't apologize.
No, I didn't.
She simply said, it was too flippant. Now, I would recommend that if we're at a stage where a comment like this causes a meltdown, and I saw George Conway, another guy we have on the show, and
we love
George, saying, read this article, it's going to make you very sad, but you must read it all. Oh, because of the fearful times we're in. Well, there's some problem with the times that we're in.
You can't be fearful.
You can't be fearful. Just because some people have said that we're fearful, let me tell you something. You can talk to anybody that's worked in the front office of NBC and MSNBC over the past 22 years. I'll tell you, I'm not fearful. You can talk to anybody who served with me in Congress. They will tell you, not fearful of leadership. Now, not fearful. And I will say, I had a wonderful conversation with David Frum. He was supposed to be on today. He said he was going to be on today. We are actually going to tweet back and forth,
back on.
talking about having him back on today, just to talk through this, to say, again, I don't know, maybe it was the right call. Maybe it wasn't the right call. I didn't know exactly how to do it after he said, if you're too drunk for Fox News, you're very, very drunk indeed. Now, let me tell you, that's something they certainly would never let in the pages of The Atlantic, or in the Washington Post.
But this is all about the media.
Or in the New York Times. They never do that. So I actually asked an editor over The Atlantic when he was so shocked what we did. I said, would you allow me in writing a column at The Atlantic to say, if you're too drunk for the New York Times, you're very, very drunk indeed. If you're too drunk for the New York Post, you're very, very drunk indeed.
In the context of talking about somebody's alcoholism.
Talking about somebody's alcoholism and people from this news organization that were actually stepping up to help the cause. To get a guy who's grossly unqualified to be sack death. Is that the time to say that? Now, I understand, David, we talked. And David Frum said, it was just a joke. And I said to him, well, you know, David, I appreciate that. And who knows, maybe I made the right call. Maybe I made the wrong call. I'm really sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. We tried to give it enough distance.
Didn't
say his name. We waited for the entire segment. We thanked him, went on. And then Mika just generally talked about a flippant comment. And I am telling you, the sound of fear the apology, none of that is true. But guess what? This is what's been going on now for several weeks. We went down to talk to the president-elect. And people wrote articles that were just false. But you know what we did? We did the corporate thing. Corporate said, don't say anything. Just keep your head down. What did the Royals say? Never explain, never complain, whatever. We did that. We enjoyed our Thanksgiving. We're like, you know what? People are upset with some of our guests, some of our friends. Maybe we snuck up on them too fast. Maybe we should have given them more of a warning. Whatever, it's fine. But guess what? The main complaint was that we called Donald Trump's rhetoric fascist during the campaign. And then we went down to have an off-the-record comment with him. Guess who else does that?
Let me see. From the New York Times,
the New York
Washington
Times,
Post, the Wall Street. You know what? I even think folks from the Atlantic.
I think actually,
I think they might
probably
be doing that.
If they have a chance to talk on the background with the incoming president and president-elect, they would do it. In fact, as somebody wrote during this outrageously stupid, immature series of articles that lied time and time again about us, reporter said, well, I'd be fired if I had the opportunity to go in and talk to somebody who's the incoming president of the United States, and I didn't do it. Ask any journalist at the New York Times, the New York Post. And that's the funny thing. People at the Washington Post especially, hair on fire, media report, how dare they, how dare they. At the same time that the Washington Post is doing the same thing, trying to speak to the president on background, trying to speak to people around the president. That's what reporters do. And by the way, guess what? That's what I've been doing for years. When I go speak to Middle East leaders on background, some who are not good people, guess what? I do it to get information and background to give it to you. I bet you didn't know, because I didn't tell you, because it was a background conversation. When I went to Élysée Palace last summer and I spoke to Macron for about an hour in his office about Ukraine, about the EU, about the ability of NATO, about his problems with the United States. I did that, but I didn't report it.
Right.
The only difference between what we did on that visit and what the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, everybody else is doing is we were transparent. We actually told you. And so I understand if you don't know how the media works day in and day out, and you're just like watching this show day in and day out, I understand that you'd be like, wow, okay, man, that's sudden. But for media reporters to lie, to pretend that this is a shock, to try to get clips, for Washington Post reporters and columnists say, how dare they go see him after they said he was a fascist? And that's exactly what the Washington Post is doing. That's exactly what the Wall Street Journal is doing.
Their job.
That's exactly what the New York Times. Yeah, you know what you call it? You call it their job. And let me say this. Two things. You can do two things at the same time. You can say he had fascist rhetoric and still go in and talk to him.
Yeah.
You know why I do that? To get the read of the man. You know why I went in and talked to Macron? To get the read of the man at a crucial time in EU funding and NATO funding. Do you know why I went to leaders in the Middle East who were angry at the United States, and I sat there and I listened to them attacking me personally for 45 minutes because of U.S. policy? You know why I do that? To get the read of the leader, to get the read of where the country's going. So I can come back here and talk to you and let you know what the hell is going on.
With context and
give you context, insight, and background. You know everybody we have on the show that's a reporter? It's what they do every day. They speak on background. Now listen, David Frum, I'm going to say this again.